So you've decided on your question for your extended essay, or you've decided on your question for your return assessment. Next stage, what you need to try and do, you need to then try and get information about the business. Now, especially for higher level people, you need to be able to do primary research. This, strangely enough, is an aspect which many students tend to do very badly on. They tend to create questionnaires where they ask lots of questions which are basically meaningless and don't give you the information which will help you answer your overall question. So today, that's what we're going to look at. How to create a rather simple questionnaire which nonetheless helps you collect all the information you need to try and be able to answer your question. Okay, so basically what we want to do is try and keep it simple as we can. We only want to ask relevant questions. We want to make sure that the people reading the questions can understand and answer the questions quickly, because if you're speaking to customers in a restaurant, or you're speaking to customers at an event, you don't want them asking what does the question mean, and you don't want them seeing 25 questions, because they won't want to answer your question, or they may not answer truthfully. Okay, so this is the question I have created, and many of my students tend to look at, for higher level, look at local businesses, restaurants and what have you. For those students who may be slightly weaker than average, this type of question is the sort of thing they can do relatively straightforward way, and hopefully get 15, 16 out of 25. But nevertheless, it's very important that the questionnaire allows them to collect information so they can answer the question. Okay, so to what extent can the Big Bamboo sports bar in Shanghai use promotion to increase sales? And there's the logo. So, first of all, what I would recommend doing is before you interview the customers, interview the owner. Because at this point you probably don't know that much about the business. The person who knows most about the Big Bamboo in Shanghai will be the owner. So you can go and ask the owner to explain what promotional strategies do they use, what would they maybe like to use, what are the constraints, maybe budget constraints, which they face. Now, you may have a problem asking someone who owns a business, can you give me your sales figures? Can you tell me your profits? But nevertheless, you can still try and get information in terms of budget constraints. Because obviously, advertising, what have you, tends to be very expensive. So the owner of the Big Bamboo would probably prioritize what he's going to use to promote his business based, to a large extent, on cost. So he could I'd look at the area of how much money he spends in that respect. You can maybe ask how much do you spend on promotion. Okay, but do be aware that the owner may not want to share sales, profit and expenditure with you. Obviously what we try and suggest to the students is collect as much financial information as possible, but that may not be possible, alright? But nevertheless, these questions do help to identify what Big Bamboo does to promote itself. As you can see in the first question, why do they use those methods? The constraints, that might be, question 3 and question 4 are a little bit similar. So the constraints could also be to do with maybe his lack of skills. Alright, maybe he doesn't have a very big support team who can create advertisements and what have you. This is linked to the budget, and this is obviously, does the business do any sort of market research to find out what type of promotional activities people like. Then, after you have done your interview with the owner, then you should start creating the questionnaire for the customers. Okay, this is an example of a really bad questionnaire. I have created this. Alright, most of these questions don't collect any information about promotion. So for example, there's lots of spelling mistakes on there, there's lots of questions which just aren't relevant. For example, do people like football, golf, tennis, etc.? What's that got to do with promotional activities? That's not clear. So this is the type of questionnaire I see quite often, whereby students have just made 10 questions up off the top of their head, and it looks terrible. Okay? So what you need to make sure is that your questionnaire is going to collect information to answer your question. I keep repeating that part, but it's very important. So hopefully your questionnaire should look a little bit like this. Alright, I think I've only got something like 5 questions here. First question is just how often do people go to the Big Bamboo? They just mark an X. That's a closed question. This again, question 2. These are all the different promotional methods used by the restaurant. And then, like, okay, don't like, I'm not aware of. And they just put a simple X. So people can do that relatively quickly. Okay, then Big Bamboo is considering the following. Do people like the idea, think it's okay, or they don't like the idea? So for example, using WeChat, having a home delivery service, having singers upstairs in the bar on Friday, Saturday, Sundays. So do people like it, alright? Then are there any other things you like or dislike about Big Bamboo's promotional activities? And then have people seen promotional activities in other restaurants which they think could be used by the Big Bamboo? This should be quite simple for customers to fill in, as after all most of the answers are tick boxes. They just mark an X, and should therefore be easy to analyse the answers. Okay, as to what the business does well, not well, and maybe what it can do in the future. Now, then the sample size should ideally be about 25. If you do 3 people, sample size isn't large enough. It probably would take too long to interview 150 people, so I'd probably say a sample size of about 25 to 30. Okay? Don't include lots of graphs. You are no longer in year 10. When you did market research activities in year 10 business, you probably did a nice little PowerPoint presentation and you included lots and lots of graphs, and the teacher gave you a nice little A or A star. That's okay for year 10. But for year 13 internal assessment, if you're going to include a graph, make sure it is a meaningful graph. If you've interviewed 20 men and 2 women and you put that as a graph in your internal assessment, it's irrelevant. Okay? So only put in those answers that you think are relevant as graphs. Okay? Also, you have 2,000 words for your higher level internal assessment. 1,500 words for your standard level internal assessment. Your analysis of your findings should be done as briefly as possible. What many of my students have done over the years is literally to do, in question 1, I asked, are you male or female? 20 of the people were male and 5 were female. Question 2, I asked and if they have 10 questions, I'm getting like 400 words of this is that. Alright, what you should try and do is summarize your answers into 100 words. I found that people like about Big Bamboo's advertising. They didn't like of possible future strategies for Big Bamboo. People liked X, Y, Z, and they didn't like A, B, C. Boom, it's done in 100 words. Then, to conclude, really finish. Alright. Interview the owner before you speak to customers. Alright? Make sure your teacher checks the questions to make sure that they make sense. Alright? If you are going to speak to the customers, have a maximum of 10 questions. If you're going to speak to the workers, well obviously that's not connected to this this type of question I have about the Big Bamboo. But again, your teacher will check those questions. They will probably, again, you'll try and make those answers, questions and answers, probably into tick box exercises. The big problem obviously with customers or with workers is that they may not be 100% honest. Okay? But speak with the owner at least twice. I suggest to my students, speak to the owner when you're just about to finish your first draft. Because at that point students will have come up with like their own ideas for what they think the business should do in the future. Then go and speak to the owner again, because at this point you will know more about the business, you will know more about the area in which you've been investigating, so therefore you might be more capable of having like a longer conversation with the owner and be better equipped to put forward your own ideas and hopefully impress the owner. Because they will see maybe that you've come up with some good answers, and they will maybe be able to say, I like this, but we couldn't introduce it because, and that may help you finesse or make your end answer more meaningful to them. Okay? So hopefully that covers questionnaires. Thank you.